Welcome to Mindsight, where we illuminate the connections between confidence, communication, science, and spirituality. I'm your host, Soujanya Kaup, and in this podcast, we will explore the fascinating intersections of the mind and the heart. Join me on this journey as we dive deep into thought provoking conversations, share colorful stories, and uncover insights that challenge conventional thinking. Whether you're looking to boost your confidence, enhance your communication skills, or understand the science behind it all, this podcast is your guide to navigating the gaps in our understanding. In our very first podcast, titled Confidently Yours, we will focus on the powerful theme of confidence. I'm thrilled to introduce our guest, the remarkable Venkat Narayan, a trailblazer in diabetes research and a man who embodies confidence and curiosity. From his early days in India to becoming one of the youngest consultants in the United Kingdom, and then taking a leap of faith to start afresh in the United States, Dr. Narayan's journey is nothing short of inspiring. Get ready to expand your minds as we explore what truly means to be confident and resilient. Let's get started. Welcome, Venkat, to this very first episode of Mindsight, and we are excited to have you here share your thoughts and experiences.
Thank you, Soujanya. I look forward to this. I am excited with this conversation.
So let's begin with this. First question. You have had an incredible journey transitioning from medicine to research, making a move from India to the UK to the US. And what was that one moment when you thought, you know what, I'm going to leave this perfectly comfortable life and start all over again in a new country, in a new field? You left behind a tenured position, something so many people dream of for stability, and jumped into a new world. So, what gave you this confidence to make such a bold move?
Everything makes sense looking back. It's easy to construct a story retrospectively. I don't believe that I had any particular plan going forward. But all along, I think the factors that I have always developed, whether innately or otherwise, have been a sense of curiosity, a level of humility where one is constantly wanting to learn and understand improve oneself. Extreme self-reflection, largely through philosophical readings, readings of literature, poetry, etc. So that background that I acquired even during my medical school years, because not being a good medical student, I was devoting a lot of my time to these personal development efforts, even without knowing what they were, that began to give me a foundation for tackling life on my terms. And beyond that, it is very difficult to say exactly how various events play out in life. But one thing became clear as I think about the future, about what happened, is that at different points in life, there is a combination of both confusion and excitement. And when that is deep, when both the excitement and confusion are both deep, it tells you there is some important opportunity waiting for you, something that in your intuition that you feel, there is sufficient confusion but sufficient excitement, that indicates that there is an opportunity. And it's really a matter of going after that opportunity at that point in time. These things don't happen every day, or they don't happen very often, but when they happen, the prepared mind together with the level of self-awareness and ability to take that risk, somewhat aligned to your own values, aligned to your own levels of interest, is what it all takes. And I think this is how a lot of things have played out in India. For me, for example, first, leaving India and spending some time in the Middle East, discovering that's not a good place for me. Secondly, in England, the decision to, after finishing 2 years of registrar in clinical medicine, which was very difficult in those days, to consider a move towards epidemiology and public health, that was an important decision. And similarly, like you mentioned, becoming a very young consultant senior lecturer with tenure in the University of Aberdeen and Grampian Health Board, settling down comfortably, and then an opportunity arises to consider moving to the National Institutes of Health. Something felt right about it. I mean, I can't say exactly what, something felt right about it, and it paid off. And I think that's how things have worked. So essentially, I'm basically saying I don't know how all this works, other than to say that one's mind and one's philosophy needs to be constantly prepared and evolving. And you reach these points in life when there is either a tremendous point of excitement and of confusion, which indicates that it's time to make a new decision. And that's how these decisions happen.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. I really like the way you put it together, confusion and excitement. That brings probably the best in you. But that is how you look at it from today's point of view. But back then, did you ever feel that when you moved to US and when you started the Emory Global Diabetes Research Center, you were just one person to begin with, and now it has massively expanded. But on the first day, when you were alone in the room, all alone, did you ever feel that, what have I gotten myself into? Did you have a bit of self-doubt at
I
that
mean,
moment?
of course, yeah, of course. I mean, self-doubt is an important thing for us to have, and that is what humility is all about. Having a level of self-doubt. So I always believe that confidence and humility need to go hand in hand together. You don't have one or the other. So, what comes across as confidence ultimately is a continuous process of internal reflection, level of humility, considerable self-doubt, but the ability to overcome all of that and to come out with a thing. I think essentially that particular day, I still remember the day distinctly in my mind. It was the 7th of August, 2006. Just that Friday, it was a Monday. On the Friday, I had ended my job at the CDC after spending exactly 10 years there. It was a prime position as head of the scientific branch for diabetes at the CDC. The nation and the world was my oyster. It was a very well-funded program, lots of 50, 60 investigators that I was working with, large staff, tremendous national and international influence. And to give up that security and move to Emory as a single faculty, and Emory was very kind to me. They gave me tenure from day one. They gave me an endowed chair and decent amounts of money to start the program. But nobody told me what I need to do. In fact, I had no grants, I had no programs, I had no staff. It was me alone in a lovely room on the 7th floor of the old, Rollins School of Public Health building. I'm sitting there in the morning. I arrived there at 7 o'clock. One thing that I did in the first year, every day I would come to work between 6:30 and 7. The reason is because the first 2 hours in the morning is my best. That's the time when my brain works at the best. So I had this whiteboard ordered in that room. I hung it there. And on the very first day, I was sitting there and I was wondering, on the one hand, what have I done? I've given up this tremendous national position at the CDC and I've moved to this basically nothing. But that gave me a tremendous level of excitement and confusion. So what am I going to do here? That question, what am I going to do, was both scary, but also exciting at the same time. Was both confusing and very clear at the same time. So that combination, that paradoxical tension between excitement and confusion was what spurred me on. So I began to dream, and I said, and when you have nothing to do, all you have is dreams. I mean, like Oscar Wilde said, we are all in the gutters, but some of us look at the stars. And I think that is what I began doing when my first few days, few weeks, few months at Emory. I started looking at the stars and also having conversations with critical people, with important people who had been successful in their own right, who were willing to share their wisdom with me, to see how I go forward. So I came across this wonderful saying, think big, start small, but leverage like hell. I put that on my wall and I've always followed that to the T. That's how I try to do things. I dream, I think very big, I think of the most impossible thing. I'm not ready to accept that it can't be achieved. But I also know realistically one needs to start small. And that starting small is where we need to be very, very creative. Because nobody's going to write an RFA and say, here is a program for you to do on your terms. Opportunities come in all kinds of ways. So you have to pick the opportunity and shape that opportunity to meet your dreams. And this is where leverage becomes important. When you look around, when I looked around, there are so many other faculty working on so many other topics which were related to what I was working on. So I would borrow their skills, I would borrow their resources, I would borrow their fellows, etc. That's how I learned. So it was a tremendous experience. And what that gave me within 6 months was a tremendous sense of both self-satisfaction and a belief in myself that one can start out of nothing and really dream big and make it happen. I think that has been the greatest reward that Emory has given me. It is not the tenure they gave me, it is not the amount of money they gave me or the endowed professorship they gave me. It is that they trusted in me, they gave me the space, the freedom, and the collegiality to dream big and to make it happen. I think that is where I think my journey really matured. My 17, 18 years at Emory have been wonderful for that particular reason. Had I stayed on at CDC, I would have continued doing what I was already doing in the security of a federal government job. I don't think I would have taken on huge different directions other than what a government institution would allow. But coming to an academic institution, I love the freedom, but freedom comes with a lot of responsibility, a lot of fear, and a lot of insistence that it is we or us that make it happen. It's not, it's ultimately you fail or you succeed depending on what you do. I think from that perspective, I love that freedom. And that freedom has given me a sense of liberation in believing that I should, anything that needs to be done, one has to do oneself and inspire others to join the effort, rather than blaming somebody or depending on somebody else to do something or complaining that the government is not doing something. In 2006, funding for diabetes, non-communicable diseases globally was non-existent. But yet, today when you look at it, we are able to compete for grants across the board, including grants that are not set aside for that particular topic. So I think we have learned the trick. I think that's how all this works.
That's really, really impressive. And I think anyone listening to this would continue to be a dreamer or become a dreamer. I mean, that's very impressive. The way you speak, I mean, it's very engaging. You hook everyone right onto you. You have got that stage presence. So what's the secret sauce for the stage presence?
I mean, I don't know. I wish, although there was a toolkit or a secret sauce for all this. I mean, one thing I've always felt is it's important to be curious. And I'm naturally a very curious person. Everything interests me. I mean, all the way from philosophy to poetry to religion to science to technology to physics to everything interests me. I also enjoy talking to people, not frivolously, but around important topics. I'm a serious person, but also a humorous person who enjoys having conversations with people, connecting with people, figuring out what motivates a person, what their emotions are, etc. So I think that broad curiosity, both in the science domain, in the domain of humanities, in the domain of human interaction, has always been something that I've always enjoyed doing. Like when I meet a person, I first try to get to know the person at a very personal level. So my connection with people is very strong. I think that's one level, the curiosity, the connection with people. And secondly, as you mature through life, as you meet people, as you read people, etc., what becomes very clear is an ability to communicate is very important. And when we talk of communication, it is about knowing the audience. When you're talking to a scientific group, you have to talk at that level. When you're talking to a lay member of the public, you have to talk at another level. When you're talking to the media, it's a third level of conversation. When it's a participant in a field study, it is a fourth level of, so it all depends. So the most important thing, it may be the same information, but being able to organize that information in a way that you can make it interesting to the audience you're approaching is extremely important. I mean, I often find that whatever we speak or write or publish should be accessible to anybody. I mean, people often say, I wrote this, but that other person could not understand. My answer to that is go back, don't blame the other person for not understanding. Ask yourself, how can I improve my writing or improve my speaking or improve my communication to make it more easily understandable. So I always put the responsibility on myself, not on anybody else. It's always the person producing the communication who has a tremendous level of responsibility to ensure that the person receiving the communication receives it. So I think communication is extremely important, and communication is exactly what connects us to the world, connects us to our ideas and to our dreams. And that's the other thing, when you're dreaming all the time, and I also like to communicate for communication's sake. When I read something that excites me, I want to share it with the world. And that has always served me well. You share it with the world, you get certain reactions back, and from those reactions, new ideas emerge, new connections emerge, new collegiality emerges. It is non-stop. It's a non-stop kind of thing. And I strongly believe that in a complex world, we often complain of lack of resources. There is a lot of resources at the level of interactions between people and systems. So we need to understand that, and to understand that, the greatest force of change in today's world is communication and information flow. So we have to stay on top of information and communicate it in ways that others get excited, in ways others' imagination is captured. People may not always respond to you. You might put out an email to a few hundred people, but some people have read it, and you also know something is happening out of it. It's like a neural network that bonds us across the world. You may not know every node and every connection in it, but it's happening without your knowledge, and it produces magic action.
So what I gather is know your audience and make your communication accessible. So sort of like having precision medicine, have precision communication. So that brings to the next topic what I want to dwell in. So I guess most people who would be listening to this talk would be much younger and would want to develop confidence in their own spaces and spheres of life themselves. So if I can ask you if there is a routine or a daily habit or a practice, what you follow every single day to cultivate confidence, what would that be? And what would be that advice to a younger yourself or a younger generation who would want to build confidence in their life?
Yeah, absolutely. Very important question. I wish I had thought about the answer for myself in my first 25 or 30 years of life. I did not. I mean, those years, I put them down as years of confusion, and I did not. But now looking back, over the last three decades or more, some things I think have started helping me, not because I planned for it, not because there was an individual development plan that somebody gave me. It was something through trial and error that has resulted in a certain pattern. I always feel that you have to set aside the best part of your day, the part of your day when your biorhythm is at its best. It's early morning for me. It might be late at night for other people. It might be mid-afternoon for some people. But you want to set aside that 1 to 2 hours of that day to two very important things. The first very important thing is using that time. Like I start my day with reading of something unrelated to my area of interest or to my topic, completely different. I open a book of poetry and read a poem quietly in my mind. Or I read 5 pages of a classic, or I read an essay in the New Yorker. It doesn't matter. The first 15, 20, 30 minutes, I like to do that. That's my way of awakening. And it's also very important to look out into nature, look at the trees, look at the breeze. It doesn't matter. Some days are sunny and bright, some days are dark and cloudy. But all of that is part of nature. So it teaches you an ability to accept everything as it comes, reality in every shape, every form. And so that combination of that, devoting yourself to some reading and to viewing nature helps with self-reflection and also with certain level of creative thought. That is one thing that I do every day. And the second thing that I try to do during the first thing in the morning, which is my best part of the day, is at least spend an hour doing that one thing which is the most important task I have set aside for that day from the previous day. And the most important task often for me amounts to writing. So a lot of us postpone the most difficult things. I start the day in the morning with the most difficult thing or the most important thing, which is likely to have the greatest impact long term. Like, for example, I might open the morning and say, today I'm going to write the first few of my thoughts for a new proposal that I want to motivate, or I might pick up a paper, edit important. So it's very important to get those two things done and out of the way. Extremely important. The second thing, to prevent my brain from getting cluttered, I do not watch television at all. I do not watch television at all. I do not go to malls. I do not go shopping. And I avoid unnecessary parties and social situations, because I find trivial talk to be painful to me. And I think a lot of people might like it, but I personally find that difficult. On the other hand, I am very fond of meeting people, particularly one-on-one or in small groups, and having deep conversations. That has always helped me. And I try to do that either as part of work. And one of the nice things about being an academic is there are lots of bright young people that you're surrounded by. And a conversation with young people, conversation with seniors helps a lot. And deep conversations are extremely important. So that is another thing that develops your ability. The other important thing, every day there is an opportunity to stretch ourselves in areas we think we don't know anything about. Okay, for example, say an expert in AI is giving a talk and you want to know what AI is, attend the talk, and at the end of the talk either ask for a question or email that person and say, can you give me that one important reading in AI which will get me to a level that I can have conversations with an expert. And I think that way, over time, all of this accumulates. So I think the most important thing here again is to put yourself out of your comfort zone on a daily basis. There is something new you need to learn every day. So I think that collection of things, and try to make all of this, try to make your work a hobby. So when you do that, you don't feel that that the work is stressing you. So when you need to do all this very importantly. And finally, you have to surround yourself with teams and people who are complementary to you. I mean, you need to know what you're good at, what you're not good at, and then work with people, with their strengths. Another person's strength might be your weakness. It is very important to create that respectful relationship where they do what they are good at, which you're not good at, and vice versa. So together, it becomes a very well-aligned team. So one of the great things that I have enjoyed is being surrounded with fantastic colleagues. I mean, I don't want to name them because there's too many to name, but people who bring complementary strengths and be natural. I think being authentic is extremely important. Like Oscar Wilde said, the most difficult act in life is to be natural. If we can acquire that, the moment you know you're natural, you have acquired a high level of self-confidence. So you almost need to have an internal thermometer, which is asking you, which is always measuring for you, am I being natural? If you can be natural, and sometimes you have to take the deliberate step to be natural. If you can be, like for example, there is a large big meeting going on, you're invited to it. I think we need the confidence to walk into that meeting like you would naturally go into anything and not feel that I have to dress differently for this, or I have to, prepare something differently for this. I've got to go sit in a different place. You just walk normally like it is a normal day. Don't allow the enormity of that meeting that others have created to put the pressure on you to behave differently. That's the most important thing, I think.
From self-reflection, let me move to self-doubt. So, do you ever get any self-doubt? And if you do get, how do you handle that? Or maybe if someone more younger, more immature, more fresh off the university, how do you suggest one should handle self-doubt?
Yeah, firstly, if you don't have self-doubt, it means you're not learning. If you don't have self-doubt, it means you're lacking in humility. Okay, so self-doubt is a very, very important thing. The analogy I would use is winter dries up your garden. Okay, and the garden and the plants wilt. But then comes spring, before the flowers start blooming, nature is going through a period of self-doubt and correction. They're watering the plant, mowing the soil, etc. So this process, I mean, I find a lot that we can learn just by observing nature and her behavior. Mother Nature is a fabulous teacher. All the lessons are out there. We just need to take it in. We don't need, that's probably the best mentor we can ever have. So how do we deal with it? Yes, self-doubt is natural. So first, accept self-doubt as not something negative, but something which is good to have. But secondly, also have a belief in yourself that self-doubt, all that self-doubt is doing is exposing you to a world of uncertainty within yourself and in the external world, and see a level of excitement in this uncertainty. Rather than let fear and uncertainty, stifle you, look at it as a source of excitement. Say, maybe this is an opportunity for me to come up with a solution for this. And look around. You will suddenly find, some reading that inspires you, a quote that inspires you, or a conversation that inspires you, and you start, preparing a way of dealing with it. So I think it's that process. It's that process of acceptance. It's that process of looking at nature and readings to find solutions, and developing a sense of self-belief. And over time, then you start believing that, yes, I am nervous, I am anxious, I have self-doubts, but there is no situation where I can't deal with. And the worst thing that will happen is I might make a fool of myself, I might fail, but that's okay. That's okay to fail. It's okay to make a fool of oneself. There will be others, everybody, So I think that is the most important thing. View life as a journey. I mean, Mother Nature does not cry when a hurricane destroys something. It doesn't. It accepts that as a part of natural renewal. So it's important to face life as renewal and not take failures or losses or defeats as anything more than part of the journey. There was a famous saying from Winston Churchill. He said, success is nothing else than moving from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. So that spirit has to be with us. You need to open the day every morning with a sense of reflection and with a sense of great excitement, and feel that you're going to live forever and the day is, with you forever. And then when the evening dawns, just once again, look at the darkness, look at the dawn, look at the night quietly settling down, and try to connect yourself with that rhythm. Go to sleep peacefully and don't let anxiety bother you at night. But before you go to sleep, try to instill important thoughts in your head so that in your subconsciousness, in your dreams, things will be happening. And this is the other very important thing. A lot of creative processes, a lot of work, a lot of problem solutions happen at the level of the subconscious, at the level of our dreams. And that is why it is very important to go to bed, priming thoughts, and also learning to sleep well. I'm a very good sleeper. I sleep at least 8 hours a day. I go to bed between 9 and 10, and I wake up, say, around 5 o'clock, by 5:30 at the latest. So that's how I regulate my life.
The analogy of nature and winter was wonderful, and you painted a picture. And you've had a colorful life, and your life is full of stories. And what is one story which screams, this is the peak of confidence right here? If you could give us a story, an interesting one, if possible, a funny one.
Oh, it's difficult. There have been so many stories. So let me think. Okay, here is one example. It relates back to the question you started with, and so it might be a nice way to end with that event. I'm a second year medical registrar in Durham, and doing endoscopies, being encouraged to go and do a senior registrarship in gastroenterology. But simultaneously, there was this confusion in me, which was strong enough to want to explore law college. I'm approaching Durham Law College and preparing to potentially, consider moving into law, because there was a part of me that is missing. And that night, it's a long night of on-call, and, couldn't fall asleep. So I go to the library at Dryburn Hospital. I find this book, Clinical Epidemiology by Fletcher and Fletcher. And when I start reading that book, I very quickly relate to what has been bothering me. It is about wanting not to know the facts in medicine, but knowing the process and the procedures and the methods to derive those facts, to generate those facts, to create those facts. So I fell in love with the idea of epidemiology. I read that book. And here I was. There were two. Next morning, I looked at the advertisements in the British Medical Journal. There was a training scheme in Northeast Thames in London. There was one in Aberdeenshire, which both of them offered, a training program, registrar, senior registrar in public health, with a master's in public health or epidemiology, all paid for with full salary, covered by the National Health Service. So I reached out to both the groups. I went and visited both of them. And then the first interview I get invited to was the Aberdeen interview. I take the train from Durham, and on the way to Aberdeen, I said, let me stop that night at Edinburgh. So I stopped that night at Edinburgh. My friend Mary Laprake had said I could go and stay there with their family. I call her, she's not there. So I go to the local, there was a local pub. I go there, sit down, having a drink and some food. And then I talk to these boys, and then it is already 9 o'clock. I keep calling Mary, and there is no answer. So these boys tell me, we'll show you, we'll take you to a bread and breakfast. You can book in for the night. And I had trusted these people fully. I thought they were become my friends. They take me in a taxi, and it is dark. I get out of the car, and they walk into a building. I walk into the building, which is when I realized that they were mugging me. They were standing with sticks, threatening to beat me up if I did not part with my, everything I had. So I give them whatever I have. I didn't have much, but they want me to go to the ATM machine, draw £100 and give it to them. So they start walking me. Two of the rough boys walk me on the street, taking me to the ATM machine. On the other side, in those days, there used to be these vans selling fish and chips and things in Scotland. I see that van, and I had the presence of mind to quickly run across the road, talk to that guy, and then go to somebody's house, call the police, and then the police arrive. Luckily, my bag with my suit and my dress had not been taken away. I take all this, and in a police car, I get driven to Mary Laprake's house. Their family is shocked, what happened to you, etc. And this was about 11 o'clock at night already. So I quickly related the story, but I told myself, it doesn't matter. This has happened, but tomorrow I'm not going to let this affect my confidence or my ability to perform at the interview. So I go to bed. Next day, Mary, drops me at Waverley Station. I take the 2-hour train from Edinburgh to Aberdeen, and in the train, not once did I think about what happened the previous day or the trauma that I went through. I focused essentially on the future and visualized the interview in my head, rehearsed within my own mind potential questions that would come and how I would answer it. I go to the interview, and it was a 1-hour interview with a panel of of interviewers. At the end of the interview, they ask you to wait. There were 8 people being interviewed. 7 of others were Scottish people, and in those days, the preference was always for the locals. It was very difficult for an immigrant to get into these elite training programs. And lo and behold, 45 minutes later, they call me in and say, your performance was so tremendous, that we want to offer you this position. Are you applying anywhere else? I said, I've considered Northeast Thames. Then they said, but if you can commit to joining Aberdeen today, this job is yours. So I got the job. I shook hands. I came out, and I said, I'm going to call my consultant back, Bill Ellis, back in Durham, and tell him I'm going to take one more day to actually meet a realtor and start looking for they used to call it flats, apartments, to buy a condominium in Aberdeen. So I spent the whole day, and by 3 o'clock, I find that one condominium that I liked. I said, I'm going to put in a deposit. £500 is what it was. I gave him a check. I sign it up. I still haven't prepared a loan, but I was confident enough at that point that I want to lay my roots into the new place and pay attention to my new job. So I think this is how all this confidence works out. I think the most important thing is not to dwell on the negativities in life, overcome it as quickly as possible, and visualize the bright part of life and prepare your mind. You don't know. A lot of what, like somebody said, the best impromptu speech is something that you have rehearsed for in your mind forever. I think that's how these things happen. None of us is so natural or so well prepared, but it is cumulative. So, when you see something, you see a flower, you see something, in your mind you want to think, if I want to relate this to somebody, how do I relate this? So those ideas are formed in your head. So it comes across as if you've not prepared, but actually you're prepared. It's an ongoing process.
Wonderful, wonderful story. So don't let anyone or anything shake you. So that's the moral of the story. So what do you think? This is one of the last few questions. So what role do you think feedback plays in building confidence? And I would like you to answer it from the receiver's point of view. So how do you ensure that you're receiving a constructive criticism and it's not something which you don't relate to at all?
Yeah, actually, feedback is extremely important. And I think the people who are most valuable to you are people who are going to give you honest, almost bordering on rough feedback. So emotionally, we have to acquire that ability to be able to separate the message from the way the message is delivered. I mean, it's easy to want somebody to deliver messages in a beautiful way, but that's fine. If somebody can do it, it's fine. But the most important thing is asking for feedback and receiving the feedback without feeling defensive or feeling the need to defend every point or to interrupt or to letting feeling that we are being unfairly subjected to something, etc. That is not important. Take everything. It's almost like you go to a junkyard, you collect all the junk, you bring it home, you put it in your backyard, and then when you have time, you try to sieve through it and say, in that junk, is there a diamond? I think that is the attitude we need, where you listen to everything in its rawest form, because sometimes in the raw form is where truth comes out or important things come out. Let it come out. Receive it. You don't take anything personally. One of the things that Jim Curran told me, which is very important, is never take anything personally. Don't take criticism or negative comments personally. Don't take praise personally. Be as neutral about both these as possible. So take all the comments, take what is useful, and what is useful, be thankful to the person giving it to you and try to improve yourself. Things that are not useful, leave it away. You don't have to go and explain things that were wrong or right, etc. This is not an argument. Somebody who is willing to give you feedback is doing you a favor. Even if it is horrible feedback, even if it is harsh feedback, view it as a favor rather than view it as something, unseemly or whatever. So I think we need to, it comes back to ourselves. What we receive is what we receive. It's not what the other person delivers. Other person can be very personal, can be very, whatever, but you can take out you can receive the right message. So I think it comes down to training the ego, training the mind to get past the surface and go into the deep ocean. On the surface, the ocean might be very rough, but deep down, once you go a few feet or a few hundred, feet below, there is beauty. There are the corals, there are the fishes. Enjoy those.
Finally, it all boils down to self-reflection and what you make out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like you asked me, use the word resilience. Resilience is probably the most important quality we can develop within ourselves. I mean, the whole idea here is we either adapt or we perish. And resilience is extremely important. And people that have studied resilience, studied about 19 or 20 factors that determine resilience. But there were 5 very important factors which all need to go together to really truly build resilience. And those 5 factors, if I remember them, are number 1, being proactive. So you have to be proactive. You don't wait for things to happen. You actually are anticipating. So the ability to anticipate and the ability to prepare for that eventuality, extremely important, number 1. Being creative, having the ability to, in any situation, to be able to say, I will come up with a creative solution. It is not a zero-sum game. So non-zero-sum logic is usually about creative. It's often the third solution, the fourth solution, or the fifth solution that you need to look for. Being flexible, extremely important. Having a rough plan is okay, having a nice philosophy is okay, but you need to be flexible as you go forward. It's a lot like sailing. I often say you want to go from A to B, but the wind is going towards C. A good sailor would take the boat, follow the wind to C, and then tack back to B. I think that flexibility is extremely important. The fourth very important thing is to be positive. You always need to remain positive. Of course, we have our negative moments, but we very quickly need to convert that to positivity. And the final thing is being organized. And what I mean by being organized is not that your table is clean or your bookshelves are tidy. That is not the kind of organization we are talking about. It is being organized with information. We all have a lot of information, and we are going to acquire a lot of new information, but the ability to quickly organize that information depending on context. The same information, how do you organize it for person A or person B or person C? How do you organize it for situation A or situation B or situation C? That is important. And I think that is a skill we have to learn. So if you have these 5 things, your resilience automatically develops. And once you become resilient, you automatically become confident. And once you become confident, you're automatically happy and joyful. And that's what life is all about.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So, well, that brings up to the end of our first episode. Mindsight, Confidently Yours. A huge thanks to Dr. Venkat Narayan for sharing his incredible journey and insights on confidence and resilience. We've learned that confidence isn't just about being loud and in charge. It's about embracing challenges, taking risks, introspecting, and sometimes just being a curious learner in the room. I hope we all enjoyed. I'm sure I did for sure enjoy this conversation, and hoping to have numerous conversations with you and to learn a lot from you. Thank you, Narayan.
Thank you very much.